Welcome, YouTubers, to another episode in my Grammar Hero series. In today's video, I'm going to work out the practice problems from the Arithmetic Reasoning subtest of the second practice test on my website. In case you want to go and take that practice test right now, here's the link. And in the event you don't want to go to that website to take this practice test, you can certainly use this video to study for the ASVAB. In that case, I'd recommend that you pause the video after I read each question, attempt to work out the question on your own scratch paper, and then resume playing the video to check your solution. As a reminder, you're not permitted to use a calculator or a reference sheet on the ASVAB. So if you take this practice test through YouTube, make sure not to use any of those resources. In the description of this video, I'm going to include timestamps that are associated with each question. Next to the timestamp, there's going to be the topic that the question's testing, as well as a link to a video where I discuss that topic in greater detail. So if at any point you feel as if you need more of an explanation, just take a look in the description, and there you'll find those additional resources. So all those things finally being said, let's go ahead and get started with today's video. All right, we're going to start with number 26, since that's where the Arithmetic Reasoning subtest starts on the website. And as we can see, it says, if your monthly salary is $1,015, how much do you have left after you pay the following bills? Rent, $443.50, electricity, $45.62, and groceries, $124.87. So this first problem is pretty straightforward. It's just testing your ability to add and subtract decimals, which is something you have to know how to do for the ASVAB. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add up all these bills, and then once I get that total, I'm going to subtract that amount from our monthly salary. So again, as far as bills go, we have rent in the amount of $443.50. Electricity, according to the problem, is $45.62, and groceries are $124.87. And in case you haven't worked with decimals in a long time, when you're adding decimals, you just drop that decimal right into place. So we can go ahead and, as our first step, just drop that decimal down. Now this is just like regular addition. We have 2 plus 7, which is 9. We have 5 plus 6, which is 11, plus 8, which is going to be 19. So we're going to have to drop down a 9 and carry a 1. Then we have 5 plus 4, which is 9, plus 1 is 10, plus 3 is 13. So we're going to drop down a 3 and carry a 1. 4 plus 4 is 8, plus 2 is 10, plus 1 is 11. So drop down a 1 and carry a 1. 4 plus 1 is 5, plus 1 is 6. So in total, you spend $613.99 on bills. And now to solve this one, we're going to take our monthly salary, which is $1,015, and we're going to subtract that by our bills, which are $613.99. Here's where a lot of people might get stuck, in as much as they're doing 0 minus 9. You would look to the left to see if you can borrow, and since that's also a 0, you can't borrow from it. You're going to have to come all the way over here and borrow from this 5. That's going to become 4, and now this is going to become 10. Then you're going to have to repeat the process one more time, so this is going to become 9, and this is going to become 10. And now we can proceed with our subtraction. 10 minus 9 is 1, of course. 9 minus 9 is 0. Drop our decimal down in place. 4 minus 3 is 1. 1 minus 1 is 0. And then you could do this as 0 minus 6, or you can read this as 10 minus 6, which would be 4. So as we can see, if we subtract our bills from our monthly income, we're left with $401.01. Okay, so that's this first one. All right, number 27 says a model of a satellite has a scale of 1 centimeters corresponds to 2 meters. If the real satellite is 12 meters wide, then how wide is the model of the satellite? Okay, so in this case, whenever you see a scale problem that's written like this, you should automatically think about setting up a proportion to solve the problem. And the way I set up proportions is like this. Proportions are two fractions that are equal to each other. And on one side of the equal sign, you put what's given. So in this case, we're told 1 centimeter corresponds to 2 meters. Then you take what's left in the problem and fill in the right-hand side of the equal sign. So in this case, we're told the real satellite is actually 12 meters wide. So you're probably wondering where you put this in this fraction. Again, we have meters in the denominator over here. So we're going to put 12 meters in the denominator over there. And of course, we want to know how wide the model of the satellite is. Well, this 1 centimeter refers to the model, so we're going to call this x centimeters. Of course, to solve proportions, you cross multiply. So we're going to do 2 times x, and that's going to be 2x equals 1 times 12. 1 times 12, of course, is 12. Now we're just solving for x, so we're going to divide both sides by 2 to get x by itself. This crosses out, leaving you with x equals 12 over 2, or just 6. In case you're wondering what units of measurement we're going to use, if we look back up to our proportion, we can see x goes with centimeters, so of course this goes with centimeters, which is answer choice D. Okay, so that's that one. I will say this, on the ASVAB, you're going to have to use proportions at least 3 or 4 times. So be prepared to use those during the test. All right, so number 28 says, if you're traveling in a car at a rate of 70 miles per hour, how much distance will you cover in 45 minutes? So on the ASVAB, you're going to solve multiple problems involving distance, rate, and time. So you're going to have to know that whenever you see those 3 elements, you're going to use the distance formula more than likely to solve the problem. Distance formula is D equals RT, where D stands for distance, R stands for rate, and T stands for time. If we look through this problem one more time, we can see that we were given a rate of 70 miles per hour, so that's going to be our R. We want to know how much distance we're going to cover, so that's going to be our D, and in 45 minutes. 45 minutes, of course, is time. So let's start plugging these things into the distance formula. Again, we're trying to solve for D, so we're going to leave that as is. According to the problem, the rate was 70 miles per hour, and the time was 45 minutes. So right now, we've hit a bit of a snag, and it may not be obvious, so let me explain. We were given a rate of speed in terms of miles per hour, but we were given a time in terms of minutes. That is to say, those two things are not proportional. So in order to proceed, I'm going to take this minutes and convert it to be in terms of hours. And to do that, I'm going to take 45 and I'm going to place it over 60 to make that conversion. Again, there are 60 minutes in an hour, so 45 over 60 will give us the equivalent amount in terms of hours. This, as it happens, is pretty easy to deal with. Both 45 and 16 are divisible by a common factor of 15. In fact, 45 divided by 15 is 3, and 60 divided by 15 is 4. So in other words, 45 minutes is equivalent to 3/4 of an hour. So instead of 45 here, I'm going to replace it with 3/4. Now, personally, I don't like dealing with fractions when I do multiplication. So again, I'm going to rewrite this one more time, and you don't have to if you don't want to. You could have used 3/4 times 70 and gotten the correct answer. But that said, I'm partial to using decimals whenever possible. And I know 3/4 is the same as 0.75 in decimal form. So instead, I'm going to work this out. 0.75 times 70. And let's go ahead and work that off to the side. We have 70 times 0.75 As you can see, we're multiplying a whole number, notably 70, by a decimal, notably 0.75. In order to proceed, I'm going to rewrite 0.75 as a whole number as well. And to do that, I can take its decimal place and shift it 2 times to the right. Of course, that makes 0.75 75 times 70. And of course, once I do this arithmetic, I'll take those 2 decimals I shifted to the right here, and I'll shift them back into the left. So 5 times 0 is 0, 7 times 0 is 0. Before we start multiplication with this 7, we have to add in a 0 placeholder. 7 times 5 is 35, carry a 3. 7 times 7 is 49, 50, 51, 52. This becomes 0 plus 5250, so we know this is just going to be 5250. That said, we have our decimals that we have to bring back into the left, so 1, 2. So we can see our distance is going to be 5250. In other words, if you're traveling at a rate of 70 miles per hour for 45 minutes, you're going to cover 52.5 miles during that time. Okay, so again, I do have a video on distance, rate, and time on my channel. It's one of my more popular videos, and I take you from doing very basic problems to doing some very complex problems. That's definitely worth checking out if you want to do well on the ASVAB. All right, number 29 says, on your first 3 math tests, you scored 90, 89, and 95. If you want a final average in your math class, if you want a final average of 90 in your math class, what must you score on your 4th and final test? So this is a problem regarding mean or averages. And in case it's not obvious, mean is found by summing all the numbers that you're given and dividing that amount by how many numbers there are. But in this case, we're going to have to make a few adjustments to that because we're given scores on 3 of the math tests. The score on the 4th math test is unknown, and we know what we want our final average to be. So in light of that, let's go ahead and plug things in accordingly. We want our final average, our mean, to be 90. So I'm going to write 90 instead of mean over here. Again, that's what we want our average to be. We're going to sum our numbers that were given. So we have 90 plus 89 plus 95. And of course, we have to account for our unknown score on the 4th and final test. In math, when you have an unknown value, you typically represent that with x. So I'm going to put plus x right here. Okay, and my pen is starting to act up again, so let's see if I can draw a straight line. And of course, so we have the sum of all the 4 tests, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, so this is going to be divided by 4. So now this is just a matter of solving for x. And the very first thing I want to do is multiply both sides by 4 to clear 4 from the denominator here. This will cross out here, and this is actually pretty easy to do mentally. 9 times 4 is 36. Therefore, 90 times 4 is going to be 360. Okay, and we're left with 90 plus 89 plus 95 plus x over here. Again, we want to get x by itself, so normally we would take these whole values and shift them over here by subtraction. That said, prior to doing that, I'm going to add these together to make the math a little bit easier. So we have 90 plus 89 and 95. Let's go ahead and add those up. 9 plus 5 is going to be 14, so we're going to have to carry a 1. 8 plus 1 is 9. 9 times 3 is 27. Okay, so this is 360 equals 274 plus x. And now we can get x by itself. So let's subtract 274 from both sides. This crosses out here, leaving you with just x. And as we can see, x is 360 minus 274. And in case you can't do that in your head, which I can't, let's go ahead and work it off to the side. 0 minus 4 we can't do, so we're going to have to borrow. This becomes 5 and this becomes 10. 10 minus 4 is 6. 5 minus 7 we can't do, so we have to borrow. This becomes 2, this becomes 15. 15 minus 7 is going to be 8, and 2 minus 2 is 0. So we can see x equals 86. In math, it's customary to write the variable for which you solved on the left. So this is x equals 86, which is b. In other words, you need to score an 86% on your fourth test, which we represent it right here, to get a final average of 90 in your math class. Okay, so that's that one. Let me go ahead and erase this so we can read our next problem. That's all we need right there. So get our pen back here. All right, number 30 says, Robert, a wheat farmer in Iowa, had 12 tons of, and let me move this up. All right, number 30 says, Robert, a wheat farmer in Iowa, had 12 tons of grain after this year's harvest. If he gave 25% of his grains to his neighbor, how many pounds of grain does Robert have left for himself? So right away, one thing should jump out at you. Up here, we're talking about grains in terms of tonnage, whereas down here, we're talking about grains in terms of pounds. So at some point, we're going to have to convert tons to pounds. So off to the side, I'm going to write 1 ton equals 2,000 pounds. Okay, so we're going to use this later on in this problem. According to the problem, though, the very first thing Robert did is he gave away 25% of his grain to his neighbor. So I'm going to take this 12 tons and I'm going to multiply that by 25%. And in order to do that, we're going to multiply it by 0.25, which is 25% in decimal form. Okay. And as we've seen in this video already, when you multiply a whole number by a decimal, you can shift the decimal such that it also becomes a whole number. So in this case, I'm going to take this decimal in 0.25 and shift it 2 times to the right to make 0.25 25. So this becomes 25 times 12, albeit with 2 decimals to shift back into the left at the end. So we have 5 times 2, which is 10. Carry a 1. 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5. Before we start multiplication with this 1, we have to bring in 1 0 placeholder. So this is 5 times 1, which is 5, and 2 times 1, which is 2. 0 plus 0 is 0. 5 plus 5 is 10, so we're going to bring down a 0 and carry a 1. And 1 plus 2 is 3. Bring our 2 decimals back over, 1, 2. So 25% of 12 is 3. So in other words, if Robert gave away 25% of his grain to his neighbor, he gave away 3 tons. So 12 minus 3, of course, is 9. That leaves him with 9 tons for himself. Okay, so at this point, we know he has 9 tons left for himself. But that said, we want to know what that amount is in terms of pounds. So here's where we're going to take tons and convert it to be in terms of pounds. So we're going to take 2,000 and multiply it by 9. And this is actually pretty easy to do. 9 times 0 is 0. 9 times 0 is 0. 9 times 0 is 0. 9 times 2 is 18. So after giving 25% away, he was left with 9 tons, which is the equivalent of 18,000 pounds. Okay, so that's that one. Right, number 31 says, the price of a gallon of gas went from $4 to $3.80. What rate of decrease does this represent? So on my channel, I made a video in regard to percent change. And percent change is synonymous with the rate of increase, and the rate of decrease. In this case, we're talking about the rate of decrease. So that should be a clue that you're going to need the percent change formula to solve this one. If you're really good with algebra, you can solve this one algebraically. But that said, the percent change formula is very easy to remember, and it's this. Percent change equals new amount minus old amount over old amount times 100. And it's worth pointing out that if PC turns out to be negative, there's a decrease, whereas when you work this out, PC is positive, there's been an increase. In light of the fact this problem said there's been a rate of decrease, we're expecting our PC to be negative once we're done working this out. So let's go ahead and start identifying things and plugging them into this formula. Again, N stands for new value, O stands for old value, PC stands for percent change. In this problem, we can see we went from an old value of $4 to a new value of $3.80. So let's plug those in accordingly. We have $3.80 minus $4 over $4 times 100. Don't worry about this 100 too much. This is actually pretty easy to do with decimals, so don't be too concerned about that. That said, we have this 380 minus 4. This isn't that easy to do if you haven't done math in a while. Because I'm experienced with math, I know this is going to be negative 0.20. That said, the way you do this subtraction is like this. You do 4 minus 380. But that said, we know we're really doing 380 minus 4. Since 4 is bigger than 380, we know our result's got to be negative. So we have 0 minus 0, which is 0. 0 minus 8 we can't do, so we have to borrow. This becomes 3, and this becomes 10. 10 minus 8 is 2. We drop our decimal in place, and 3 minus 3 is 0. So we can see that 380 minus 4 is negative 0.20. So let's just write negative 0.20. This is divided by 4 times 100. Okay, so as far as this 100 goes, let's disregard that for a minute because there's a few things we can do with it. What I want to do right now is do 0.20, and I want to divide that by 4. Okay? And again, we have a negative divided by a positive, so we know our result's going to be negative. Let's just go ahead and get rid of that. But that said, we're doing long division involving a whole number, notably 4, and a decimal, notably 0.20. As long as the decimal's inside the division bracket, there's no problem with that. All you would do is bring your decimal right here. So you just bring it up vertically. That said, we're now asking ourselves, how many times does 4 go into 2? It doesn't, so we have to place a 0 here. Now we're asking ourselves, how many times does 4 go into 20? Of course, the answer to that is 5, given that 4 times 5 is 20. And since we brought our decimal up here, we can disregard it right here. So this is 20 minus 20, which is 0. So in other words, 0.20 divided by 4 is the same as negative 0.05. Of course, this is times 100. And to do this math, we have a negative times a positive, so we know our result's going to be negative. And we're multiplying a decimal by a power of 10. Whenever you multiply a decimal by a power of 10, such as 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, and so on, you take the decimal in that number and you shift it to the right according to how many zeros there are in the power of 10. So in 100, there are 2 zeros. So we're going to take this decimal and shift it 2 times to the right. So in other words, negative 0.05 times 100 is just going to be 5. And of course, we know that's going to be percent. So in other words, a decrease of A decrease from $4 to $3.80 represents 5% decrease. So the answer to this one is B, of course. Okay, so that's that one. All right, number 32 says the radius of a circular playground is 60 feet. Fencing costs $5 per foot. Then how much will it cost to enclose the playground with a fence? So if it's helpful, you can draw a diagram. Specifically, we know we're working with a circular playground that has a radius of 60 feet. In case you haven't worked with geometry in a while, radius is defined as the distance from the center point of the circle to the edge of the circle. So we know this distance is 60 feet. What's more, we have to know if we're dealing with area of the playground or the circumference of the playground. Again, we want to know how much it's going to cost to put a fence wherever I put these X's. And as we can see, that's the distance around the playground. So distance around the playground is going to be in regard to circumference. And circumference can be found using two formulas. It's either 2 pi r or pi times diameter. In this case, we were given the radius, so we're going to use circumference equals 2 pi r. And of course, we know r is 60 feet according to the problem, so let's just plug these things in and start working. We have 2 times pi, and the radius is 60. 2 times 60 is 120. So we know the circumference of this playground is 120 pi. On the ASVAB, you're either going to be told that pi is going to be 22 over 7, but if you're not told that, you're going to let pi be 3.14. So let's go ahead and replace this pi with 3.14. Again, we're working with multiplication involving a whole number and a decimal. So let's go ahead and work this off to the side. We have 120 times 3.14. In order to make this math a little bit easier, let's, as we've done in this video previously, take this decimal and shift it 2 times to the right to make 3.14, 314. Of course, that's times 120. And of course, we know we're going to take those 2 decimals we move down here to the right and shift them back into the left when we're done. 4 times 0 is 0, 1 times 0 is 0, 3 times 0 is 0. Before we start multiplication with this 2, we have to bring in a 0 placeholder. 4 times 2 is 8, 1 times 2 is 2, 3 times 2 is 6. Before we start multiplication with this 1, we have to bring in 2 0 placeholders. So we have 1 times 4, which is 4, 1 times 1, which is 1, and 3 times 1, which is 3. Let's go ahead and add all this up. 0 plus 0 plus 0 is 0. 8 plus nothing is 8. 2 plus 6 is 4. 6 plus 1 is 7. And 3 plus nothing is 3. Let's bring in our 2 decimals, 1, 2. So we can see that the circumference, if we work it out, is 376.8 feet. Okay, and now we got to figure out how much it's going to cost to enclose this playground that is 376.8 feet in circumference. We know it's $5 per foot, so we're going to take 376.8 and multiply it by 5 to get our final answer. Again, we're multiplying a decimal by a whole number. So I'm going to take this decimal, shift it 1 time to the right to make this 3,768 times 5. And once I work this out, I'm going to take 1 decimal and shift it back into the left. 5 times 8 is 40, so we bring down a 0 and carry a 4. 6 times 5 is 30 plus 4 is 34, so we bring down a 4 and carry a 3. 7 times 5 is 35, 36, 37, 38, bring down an 8 and carry a 3. 5 5 times 3 is 15, 16, 17, 18. Shift our 1 decimal back into the left. So we can see that in total, it's going to cost $18.84 to fence this playground if fencing costs $5 per foot. Okay, so that's that one. Again, you're going to have to know how to find circumference and area of circles. For circumference, there's two formulas: pi times diameter, if you're given the diameter, or 2 pi r, if you're given the radius, which we were in this case. Okay, so that's this one. All right, number 33 says it takes 3 hours to wash every window in a building. If the building has 30 windows, how many seconds does it take to wash each window individually? So this problem's pretty tricky in as much as we're given time in terms of hours, but we want to convert that number eventually to be in terms of seconds. So if you're thinking about making conversions, we're going to eventually have to convert from hours to minutes and finally to seconds to answer this one. All right, so right off the bat, let's make this math a little bit easier by converting 3 hours to be in terms of minutes. Again, we're converting 3 hours to be in terms of minutes. When you're converting a bigger unit to a smaller unit, hours are bigger than minutes, you do multiplication. So in this case, we're going to take 3 and we're going to multiply it by 60. Since there are 60 minutes per every hour, 6 times 3 would be 18. Therefore, 3 times 60 is going to be 180. In other words, there are 180 minutes in 3 hours. Okay? And with that out of the way, let's think about our next step. Again, it takes 180 minutes to clean every window in this building, and there are 30 windows in the building. So to figure out how many minutes it takes to wash each window, we're going to do 180 divided by 30. That is the total time it takes to wash the building, divided by how many windows there are in the building. This math is not as hard as it looks. We can cross out these corresponding zeros, and this leaves us with 18 over 3. 18 divided by 3 is 6. So this tells us it takes 6 minutes to wash each window in this building. So now we want to convert minutes, notably 6 minutes, to be in terms of seconds. And as we did over here, we're going to do multiplication since we're converting a bigger unit to a smaller unit. Minutes are bigger than seconds, and there are 60 seconds in every minute. So this is going to be 6 times 60. If you think about this one logically, 6 times 6 would be 36. Therefore, 6 times 60 is going to be 360. So this 6 minutes is equivalent to 360 seconds. Okay, so this one is C, 360 seconds. Okay. All right, let's move on to the next one. All right, number 34 says a landscaping company placed 2 orders with a nursery. Their first order was for 13 bushes and 4 trees, and it was $487 in total. The second order was for 6 bushes and 2 trees, and it was for $232 in total. How much did each bush and tree cost individually? Whenever you see a problem that's asking you to solve for 2 things individually, that should be a clue that you're going to need a system of equations to do so. And if you recall, system of equations are usually x plus y equals some whole number. And in this case, if we let trees be x and bushes be y, we can take these 2 pieces of information that we're given and convert them into algebraic expressions. So let's go ahead and do that. Again, I'm just going to draw this symbol to signify that we're working with a system of equations. And again, I let bushes be y, so we're going to go with that, and trees be x. So this first bit says the first order was for 13 bushes and 4 trees. So 4x plus 13y equals 487. This says 4 times sum cost of trees plus 13 times sum cost of bushes totaled 487. That represents this information algebraically. Let's do the same thing for the next part. Again, I let bushes be y, so this will be y and this will be x. So this was 2 trees plus 6 bushes totaled 232. Okay? Now all we do is have to solve this system of equations for one of these variables, and once we do that, finding the other value will be pretty easy. And again, when you're working with a system of equations, you want to try to either substitute one value in for the other, or you want to try to eliminate one of the values completely. In this case, I know if I multiply this bottom equation by -2, that will result in -2 times -2x, which will be -4x. 4x minus 4x will be 0. In other words, this x value will be eliminated. So that's what I'm going to do. Again, I'm just going to copy over this top equation since I'm not multiplying it by any constant. So this is going to be 4x plus 13y equals 487. And again, we're going to take this -2 and we're going to distribute it to everything in this bottom equation. -2 times 2x, as I just mentioned, is -4x. -2 times 6y is -12y. And then -2 times 232, I'm going to work off to the side. This is 232 times. Again, this is a -2, so we know the result's going to be negative. 2 times 2 is 4. 3 times 2 is 6. 2 times 2 is 4. So -2 times 232 is -464. Now we're going to add these two equations together. 4x minus 4x is eliminated, so we got rid of the x variable. 13y minus 12y is just y. And then we have 487 minus 464. 7 minus 4 is going to be 3. 8 minus 6 is going to be 2. And 4 minus 4 is nothing. So again, we can see that y, which refers to bushes, says that each bush cost $23. So let's look through this problem to see which of those says that. Again, y refers to bushes. Bushes are $23 a piece. Bush 47, bush 25, bush 22. The only logical answer in this case is bush being $23. Now, if you wanted to solve this one completely and check the fact that the tree should be $47 a piece, you would take this y equals 23, plug it into either of these two original equations, and then solve for the other variable, and we can do that right now. Again, this bottom equation said 2x plus 6y equals 323, or 232, sorry about that, 232. And again, we know the value of y is 23, so this is 2x plus 6. Again, the value of y was 23 equals 232. Let's go ahead and multiply 6 by 23. So this is 23 times 6. 3 times 6 is 18, carry a 1. 6 times 2 is 12, plus 1 is 13. So this is the same as 2x plus 138 equals 232. Let's subtract 138 from both sides. This crosses out here, leaving you with 2x equals 232 minus 138. 2 minus 8 we can't do. We have to borrow. This becomes 2. This becomes 12. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So this is 4. 2 minus 3 we can't do. We have to borrow. This becomes 1. This becomes 12. 12 minus 3 is 9. And 1 minus 1 is nothing. So this is 2x equals 94. get x by itself, we're going to divide both sides by 2. So this is x equals 94 divided by 2. Let's work that off to the side. 94 divided by 2. 2 goes into 9 4 times without going over. Given that 2 times 4 is 8. 9 minus 8 is 1. Drop down this 4. 2 goes into 14 7 times without going over. 2 times 7 is 14. So we can see there's no remainder, which means x is 47. In other words, the cost of each tree is $47, whereas the cost of each bush is $23. And as we can see, that does in fact match what A says there. So that's that one. All right, number 35 says a 10-foot ladder is leaning against the side of a building such that the base of the ladder is 6 feet from the building. How far above the ground is the point where the ladder touches the building? Okay, so for this one, it's going to be helpful to draw a diagram. We know we have some building here, and we know a ladder is leaning up against it. More specifically, we know the ladder is 10 feet long, so we know that distance from here to here is 10 feet. And we know the base of the ladder is 6 feet from the building, so from here to here is 6 feet. In case it's not obvious, the shape that this ladder leaning against this building forms is a right triangle. And the distance we want to find, according to this problem, is from the base of the building, which is right here, to the point at which the ladder touches the building, which is right here. So we want to find this distance. As it happens, we can make use of the Pythagorean theorem to do so. Again, the Pythagorean theorem says a squared plus b squared equals c squared, where a and b refer to the legs of a right triangle, and c refers to the hypotenuse of a right triangle. The hypotenuse is pretty easy to identify. It's always directly across from the right angle. So in this case, our hypotenuse is 10. And as far as legs go, you could either let this be A and this be B, or this be A and this be B. It really doesn't matter. But I'm going to call this side A and this side B. Okay? So all we have to do is plug these values into the Pythagorean theorem and solve for A. Again, we don't know what A is, so we're going to leave that as A squared. We know B, which is one of the legs of this right triangle, was 6, so this is 6 squared. And we know the hypotenuse, furthermore, is 10, so this is 10 squared. So this is A squared plus 6 squared is 36 equals 10 squared, which is 100. Let's go ahead and subtract 36 from both sides. This crosses out, leaving you with A squared over here. 100 minus 36, let's do that off to the side if you can't do it in your head. This is 100 minus 36. 0 minus 6 we can't do. We can't borrow from this 0, so we have to come all the way over here. Make this a 0, make this a 10. Borrow one more time, so this becomes 9. This becomes 10. 10 minus 6 is 4. 9 minus 3 is 6. Nothing minus nothing is nothing. So, in other words, 100 minus 36 is 64. Let's take the square of both sides to get rid of this a squared. This crosses out the square, just leaving you with a. And the square root of 64 is 8. So this height from the base of the building to the point at which the ladder touches the building is 8 feet, which is B. And we used, as you just saw, the Pythagorean theorem to figure that out. Okay, so that is it for this video. I hope you found it helpful. In all honesty, some of these problems were pretty challenging. And in general, people find the arithmetic reasoning subtest of the ASVAB more challenging than the mathematics knowledge subtest. The only way to get through that is to keep practicing. Again, as I like to say in most of my videos, I recommend that you take 10 of these practice tests to really become proficient at solving these problems. Regardless, I hope you found this video helpful. As always, you're more than welcome to leave feedback in the comment section below. And if you like the content I'm creating, please consider subscribing to my channel. But on that note, I'm going to go ahead and cut you loose.
Konnichiwa.